Hello champions, welcome to Selection IAS. Today we are going to cover the history of India under the Delhi Sultanate. In the previous section, we have already covered the political developments of Delhi Sultanate, right? So today we are going to cover the socio-economic and cultural development during the Delhi Sultanate. Before discussing this topic, I want to bring some highlights on the patterns and trend of UPSC. UPSC for the past few years have been focusing more on the socio-economic and cultural developments rather than simply the political developments, right? And this is not only relevant for the medieval history, but also for the ancient history. Okay, so you are supposed to know the development of administration, art and culture, social and economic and revenue system, right? At the same time, there would be so many keywords. Okay, so you are supposed to have a hold on those keywords. Okay, if you see the previous year questions of prelims examination, then you would realize that every year they are asking question on keywords. Okay, for the example, last year they asked on Hundi. Okay, before that there was question on Visya, right? So please focus on the keywords. And here we go. Let's begin with the topic administrations of Delhi Sultanate, right? So the establishment and expansion of Delhi Sultanate led to the evolution of a powerful and efficient administrative system in India. Okay. Although the Delhi Sultanate had disintegrated, right, later on, but their administrative system made a powerful impact on the Indian provincial kingdoms and later on the Mughal system of administration. Okay. So as you do know, the Sultans of Delhi supported the spread of Islamic law, right? And it was Islamic state. We call it Islamic political development in India under the Delhi Sultanate, right? So the Sultans of Delhi considered themselves as representatives of the Caliph, right? वो अपने आप को एक खलीफा or Caliph was the supreme head of the Islamic people in the world, right? So all the Sultans of Delhi, they used to consider themselves as representatives of the Caliph only, right? So they included the name of Caliph in the khutbah or prayer and inscribed it on their coins also. So yeah, here is more information on Caliphate. The Sultans of Delhi paid ceremonial homage to the Caliphs of Egypt. Though by that time, Caliph's power had lost its earlier strength and significance, but still, the Sultans of Delhi paid ceremonial homage to the Caliphs of Egypt, right? And they sought formal recognition for their being his deputy, right? With the help of this beautiful diagram, you can understand the nature of administration under the Delhi Sultanate. So Sultan was used to be the head of the state. Okay, then to support Sultan, there were different ministers, different departments, right? So Wazir, he was the head of finance department, ministry of finance. At the same time, he was prime minister. Diwani Risalat, it was the department related with the foreign affairs. Okay, then we had Sadr, who was the actually minister of Islamic laws. Diwani Insa, he was actually minister of correspondence, right? And then Diwani Arich, he was defense minister, and Kaji was the minister of law. All right, so we will see more on this in later part. Now let's see the developments of administration under the different sultans of Delhi, right? So although the Ghiyasuddin Balban called himself as the shadow of God, if you remember, Ghiyasuddin Balban was the first sultan of Delhi who brought the idea of to show sultans as the shadow of God, right, in order to claim his legal sovereignty, right? So he continued to practice of including the name of Caliph in the khutbah and coins also, right? Apart from him, Samsuddin Iltutmish, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and Firoz Shah Tughlaq, they obtained Mansur. Mansur was the official letter of permission from the Caliph. Okay, so they were the sultans, but apart from these sultans, there were other sultans like Alauddin Khilji, who did not get any permission from the Caliph. Okay, in fact, Also the also that the Qutbuddin Aibak, the first sultans of Delhi, right? There was no clear law of succession during this period. Okay, so we are going to discuss so many statements like this. Okay, and in prelims examination, they are important. Okay, they can ask you such kind of a statement, and then you have to identify whether the current statement is, or that particular statement is correct or incorrect. Okay, so basically there was no clear law of succession, right? All the sons had equal claim to the throne. In fact, Iltutmish even nominated his daughter Rajia Sultan in preference to his sons, right? However, throughout the Delhi Sultanate, from the first dynasty, that is slave dynasty, to the last dynasty, that is Lodi dynasty, right? The military superiority remained the main factor in the matters of succession. Okay. Yeah. Now let's discuss about ulama class. So ulamas were basically, okay, they used to call themselves as Muslim divines. Okay, so they were the people having command on Islamic laws, right? So ulamas were the authoritative interpreters of the Islamic law. Okay, so the sultans consulted them not only on the points of Muslim law but also on the matters of state policy. Okay, so these were the ulamas. Like the same system we used to have in ancient history. Okay, when you see that all the kings like Gupta's king, Vardhan kings, okay, so they patronized some Brahmins scholar in their court, right, to get some advice on religious matters. So similarly, the sultans of Delhi also, okay, they had the class of ulemas to take advice from them on religious matters. Okay, the sultan was the supreme sovereign. Okay, he was subject to general conformity with the law. The sultan was the head of the state and enjoyed all the legislative, executive, and judicial powers. So there was no system like separation of powers like today we have in the democracy. Okay, so it was the sultan only who enjoyed all the legislative, executive, and judicial power. Next topic is central government during the Delhi Sultanate. Okay, so we are going to talk about the whole system of central government. Please focus on the keywords here. Okay, like Diwani Aris, Arije Mamlik, Nayab. Number one, the post of Nayab was the most powerful throughout the Delhi Sultanate. So basically, he practically enjoyed all the powers of Sultan and exercised general control over all the departments. And next to him was the Wazir, who was Minister of Finance and Prime Minister. Okay. Wazir was the head of Finance Department of Finance, also known as Diwane Vijarat. Right. The next important department was military department. It was called Diwane Arij. It was headed by Arij Mamlik. So please remember that Diwane Arij is related to military department and it was headed by Arij Mamlik. Okay. She was responsible for recruiting the soldiers and administrating the military department. But here the point to be noted that Arij Mamlik was not the commander-in-chief of the army. Okay. Though he was head of this Diwane Arij, but he was not the commander-in-chief. It was the Sultan of Delhi himself was the commander-in-chief of army. Please remember this part. Okay. Also, it was the era when there was fear of Mongols, okay, that they would invade in India at any point of time. So to handle the Mongols invasions and so on, right, especially sultans like Ghiyasuddin Balban and Alauddin Khalji, right, they actually made their army, their military very, very strong. So let me remind you the whole system of administration once again. So Sultan was the supreme head, and then there were some minister to help Sultan. The Wazir was the prime minister as well as the minister of finance. Diwane Risalat, he was the foreign affairs minister. Sadr Sadr, he was minister of Islamic law. Diwane Insa, he was correspondence minister. Then Diwane Arij, defense or war minister, and Qazi ul Qajar, he was minister of justice. Okay. During the time of Alauddin Khalji, we know that there were so many reforms, okay, with respect to market, with respect to agriculture, right? So it was Alauddin Khilji who introduced the system of branding of the horses, basically known as Dag system. So please remember, Dag system is related to branding of the horses. It was Alauddin only who started the payment of salary in cash, okay, to all the soldiers. Now cavalry was given importance under the Delhi Sultanate equally. Next department was Diwan-e Risalat. It was the Department of Religious Affairs and headed by Chief Sadr, Sadr. Okay. So all the developments with respect to grants, with respect to construction and maintenance of mosques, tombs and madrasas. Okay, madrasas were basically Islamic schools where they used to provide Islamic education. So it was all under the Diwan-e Risalat. Next, we have the head of the judicial department. Okay, he was the chief Qazi. This point is going to be very, very important, very, very significant. Okay, in fact, you can find this statement in many of the test series in the market. Okay, see, so please pay attention. Muslim personal law or Sharia was followed in the civil matters. So we have two kinds of system. In justice system, okay, one is civil matters and another one is criminal matters. Okay, so for the civil matters, there was separation. Muslim people were governed under Muslim personal law or Sharia. Okay, but Hindus were governed by their own personal law, and their cases were dispensed by the village panchayats. Is that clear? So it was not the case that this Sharia or the Muslim personal law was imposed on each and every individual of the Sultanate, right? It was not the case. So there was different department, different system of governance in the case of civil matters with respect to Muslim people and separately for Hindu people. Is that clear? Now, but for the criminal law, it was same. Okay. So criminal law was based on rules and regulations made by the sultans. The department of correspondence was called Diwan-e-Insa. Now we are going to study about the local administration under the Delhi Sultanate, and here you would see some important keywords. Please focus on this part, pay attention to it. So it was the Delhi Sultanate, but now this Sultanate would be divided in many provinces, many states like, so these provinces were known as Iqtas. Is that clear? And the head of the provinces, the governors of the provinces were called Muktis or Walis. Okay, Muktis or Walis, remember this. So they were the ones to maintain the law and order and collect the land revenue. The provinces were divided. Now the Sultanate was divided in many provinces. Now provinces were further divided into 6, and the head of the 6 was Sikdar, and next division was Pargana. Okay, now this Pargana comprising a number of villages. So this Pargana was headed by Amil. Okay, remember this. So the head of the Sultanate was Sultan. The head of the provinces was Muktis or Wali. Then further these provinces were divided into 6. Okay, 6. And the head of the 6 was Sikdar. Now, this 6 is further divided into Parganas. Okay. So the head of the Pargana was Amil. Finally, the most basic level was village, the gram. The village headman was known as Mukaddam or Chaudhary. Okay. So, in fact, this is something which was asked in UPSC recently. Okay, Mukaddam or Chaudhary, they were the village headmen. Okay, like the way we are having today Pradhans, okay, or Sarpanch in villages. The village accountant was called Patwari. Okay, in fact, this Patwari, the post of Patwari is still going on in different states like Rajasthan. Next topic is about economy or the revenue system under the Delhi Sultanate. Okay, so once again, this is going to be a very, very significant topic. Please pay attention to it. Okay, and here would be some keywords also. So here we go. After consolidating their position in India, the Sultans of Delhi introduced reforms in the land revenue administrations. Okay, so the basically lands, they divided the lands into three categories: Ikta land, Khalisa land, and Inam land. So Ikta land were lands assigned to the officials as Iktas instead of payment for their services. Is that clear? So Ikta land was basically a kind of salary. Okay, so they did not provided salary in cash. Okay, so all the Iktidars, they used to get lands assignments. Okay, then they had Khalsa land. Khalsa land. So it was the land under the direct control of the Sultan, and the revenues collected were spent for the maintenance of the royal court and royal households. So Khalisa land was under direct control of the Sultan of Delhi. Ikta land were under the Iktidars or the governors. Okay. Then we had Inam. So Inam land assigned or granted to the religious leaders or religious institutions. Inam, as the name suggests, Inam, right? Something like reward. Apart from this three land system, there were some other sources of tax. Okay, so it was Usr, Kharaj, Khams, Jizya, and Zakat also, right? Now let me tell you the basic meaning of all these keywords. Okay, Usra. Usr was a tax on land which was collected from Muslim peasants. So it was basically 10% of the produce on the land watered by natural resources, and 5% on the land which enjoyed facilities provided by irrigation works. Okay, so you don't have to remember the data, simply focus on Usr. What was Usr? It was a tax on land which was collected from Muslim peasants. Then we had Kharaj. Then we had the system of Kharaj, right? So it was land. So Kharaj was a land tax charged from non-Muslim. Usr was on Muslim people, but Kharaj was charged on non-Muslims. Okay. Next was Khams. So it was 1/5 of the booty captured in the war, right? Jizya. It was a religious tax on non-Muslim people. According to Islam, a Jimmy. So basically a non-Muslim person was known as Jimmy. Okay, they used to call them Jimmy. They had no right to live in the kingdom of a Muslim Sultan. Okay. But this concession was permitted after payment of tax called Jizya. Women, children, beggars, priests, Brahmins, etc., and all those who had no source of income were exempted from this tax. Please remember, Firoz Shah Tughlaq levied this tax on Brahmins also. Okay. Then finally, Zakat. This was a religious tax which was imposed only on rich Muslims. Okay. And it was 2.5% of their income. So Zakat is a kind of donation, okay, that you are supposed to give. Apart from all these, there were other taxes like horse tax, trade tax, grazing tax, which was imposed by Alauddin Khilji, property revenues, mines tax, etc. Okay. The peasantry paid 1/3 of their produce as land revenue. 1/3. Please remember this. Okay, it was 1/3, not 1/6, not 1/5. And sometimes even 1/2 of the produce. Okay, if you see the reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, so he actually did reform in Doab region. Okay, in the plains of Ganga and Yamuna, right? So he imposed around this 1/2 of the produce as tax. Okay. Sultans like Muhammad bin Tughlaq and Firoz Shah Tughlaq took efforts to enhance agricultural production by providing irrigational facilities and by providing takwi loans. Okay, so takwi loans were related to agriculture only. Okay, please remember this. In fact, Muhammad bin Tughlaq created a separate agricultural department known as Diwani Kohi. Okay, so please remember, Diwane Kohi is related to agriculture and it was created by Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Okay. During the Sultanate period, the process of urbanization gained momentum. Okay, we saw the rise of so many cities like Lahore, Multan, Bharuch, Ahilyawada, Lakhnauti, Daulatabad, Delhi, and Jaunpur. They were the important among them. Okay, Delhi remained the largest city in the east. Apart from this, India exported a large number of commodities to the countries on the Persian Gulf. So they were having trade relation with the countries of Persian Gulf and West Asia and also to Southeast Asian countries. All right. Overseas trade was under the control of Multanis and Afghan Muslims. Inland trade was dominated by Gujarat Marwari merchants and Muslim Bohra merchants. Okay. So there were different constructions of roads and their maintenance facilitated for smooth transportations and communication. Okay. Particularly the royal roads were kept in good shape. They also built sarais. Sarais were basically rest houses on highways. Cotton, textile, and silk industry flourished in this period. Okay, so we are basically talking about the revenue system under the Delhi Sultanate, right? So you are supposed to know all these important keywords, okay, because in the men's examinations also, okay, you would get questions like this, okay, about the revenue system of Delhi Sultanate, about the military policies of Delhi Sultanate. Okay, so to write a better answer, you are supposed to know such kind of important statements. Sericulture was introduced on a large scale, which made India less dependent on other countries for the import of raw silk. Okay, so basically countries like China, they were dominating the raw silk, right? But now the sultans of Delhi, they focused to make Delhi Sultanate independent. Okay, paper industry was also booming. The system of coinage had also developed during the Delhi Sultanate period. You know, Iltutmish issued several types of silver tankas, right? It was introduced by Iltutmish. Gold coins or dinars became popular during the reign of Alauddin Khilji after his South Indian conquest. Right? Copper coins were available, but they were less in number and dateless. Okay. Also, we know about the experiment of token currency by Muhammad bin Tughlaq, but later on it proved to be disastrous for the Delhi Sultanate. So let's see some important keywords related to judicial administration. The Sultan was the highest judicial authority. Qazi ul Qazr was the chief judicial officer. A Qazi was appointed in every town and criminals were punished severely. Okay, severely. Yeah, at the same time, we should analyze that what kind of society was there during the Delhi Sultanate. Okay, so see, even before the coming of Islamic people in India, okay, or the beginning of Turkish rule in India, there were some evils in our society. For example, casteism, okay, sati system, parda system, and so on, right? So let's see about the development during the Delhi Sultanate period in this regard. Traditional caste system with the Brahmins on the upper strata of the society was prevalent. Okay, so you saw in the ancient history, you saw the beginning of Varna system. Okay, when society was divided into 4 parts: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaisya, and Sudras. So still during the Delhi Sultanate period also, Brahmins were on the top. The subservient position of women also continued, and the practice of sati was widely prevalent. The seclusion of women and the wearing of parda became common among the upper class women. Parda means veil. The Arabs and Turks brought the parda system into India. So it was introduced by Arabs and Turks in India, and it became widespread among the Hindu women in the upper classes of North India also. During the Sultanate period, the Muslim society remained divided into several ethnic and racial groups. Okay, the Turks, the Iranians, Afghans, and the Indian Muslims developed exclusively, and there were no intermarriages. Please underline this: there were no intermarriages between these all groups. Okay, In fact, Hindu converts from lower caste were also not given equal respect. The Muslim nobles occupied high offices, but very rarely the Hindu nobles were given high position in the government. The Hindus were considered jimmis. Okay, I told you non-Muslim people were called jimmis, or protected people, for which they were forced to pay a tax called jizya. Firoz Shah Tughlaq separated it from the land revenue and collected jizya as a separate tax. Please underline this. Okay, so jizya was even before the Firoz Shah Tughlaq, but earlier it was under the land revenue tax only. But Firoz Shah Tughlaq later on separated the jizya tax from the land revenue tax. And this is the most important topic from Delhi Sultanate, the development of art and architecture. Okay, so in this part we are going to talk about what kind of architectural reforms they brought up. Okay, what kind of specimen of architecture they developed in India, in various parts of India, right? So here we go. The Turks introduced arches. Okay, this is the actual picture of arches. Okay, and this is a kind of gateways. Okay, gateways like we have Gateway of India, India Gate. So in India, it was basically introduced by the Sultans of Delhi. Okay, so they introduced arches, domes, and lofty towers like minarets, like we are having the Qutub Minar, right? And decorations using the Arabic script. If you go to any Islamic architecture, for example, the Red Fort or the Jama Masjid or maybe the Qutub Minar, there you would find some Arabic scripts, some Arabic lines are written on the walls, right? They use the skill of the Indian stone cutters. They also added color to their buildings by using marbles, red and yellow sandstones, and so on. Okay, so these are the beautiful pictures of various arches. Now they also developed the system of domes in India. Okay, so this part, see in the picture. So this upper part, this upper part is known as domes. Okay. Delhi Sultans had a great taste for architecture. Architectures were a blend of Indian. This Islamic architecture was blend of Indian Islamic styles. Okay, the three well-developed styles were imperial style, provincial style, and Hindu architecture during the Sultanate period. Now let's discuss some of the important specimens of architecture. In the beginning, they converted temples and other structures demolished into mosques. For the example, Quwwatul Islam Masjid, Quwwatul Islam Mosque near the Qutub Minar area. Okay, in Delhi was built by using the materials obtained from destroying many Hindu and Jain temples. Okay, so this is the Qutub complex. Here you can see this is the minaret, Qutub Minar. Okay, and this is the Quwwatul Islam Masjid. This is the arches. Okay, this is the gallery. All these are part of the Qutub complex only. Now, let's see the development of architecture during the various dynasties of Delhi Sultanate. During the Mamluk or slave dynasty, we saw the development of Qutub Minar, Quwwatul Islam Masjid, the tombs of Nasiruddin Muhammad, and Balban City, the new town in Delhi. During the Khalji period, we saw Dargah of Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia. In Delhi, it is still very famous, right? And people from across the world, they come to visit this place, Nizamuddin Aulia. So it was made only during the time of Khilji period. Okay. Also, Alai Darwaja. Alai Darwaja is a gateway, okay, in the complex of Qutub Minar. Okay, and it was developed by Alauddin Khilji only. This is why it was named Alai, because it was made by Alauddin Khilji, Alai Darwaja. During the Lodi period, we see Lodi Gardens, Moti Masjid in New Delhi, and the tomb of Sikandar Lodi. Okay, so I'll show you the picture of Lodi Garden also, so that you can remember in a better way. The most magnificent buildings of the 13th century was the Qutub Minar, which was founded by Qutbuddin Aibak but completed by Samsuddin Iltutmish. This tower was dedicated to the Sufi saint Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki. Okay, so Kutubuddin Aibak actually named this minaret Qutub Minar on the name of his religious guru Sufi saint Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki. Okay. Later on, Alauddin Khalji also added an entrance to the Qutub Minar called Alai Darwaja. So this is the Qutub Minar. Now, let's talk about development of architecture during the Tughlaq period. The buildings of the Tughlaq period were constructed by combining arches and domes. They also used the cheaper and easily available grey color stones. In fact, in Delhi, they made a separate capital known as Tughlaqabad. This is a small part in Delhi only, right? And the palace complex called Tughlaqabad, where its beautiful lake was built during the period of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, the first sultan of the Tughlaq dynasty. Muhammad bin Tughlaq built the tomb of Ghiyasuddin on a high platform. Okay, so see the hypocrisy. Muhammad bin Tughlaq actually killed his father Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq to become the Sultan of Delhi, and after killing him, he built the tomb of his father. The Firoz Shah Kotla in Delhi, there is Kotla Fort also, right? So it was actually created by Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Lodi Garden in Delhi was the example for the architecture of Lodhis. Okay, so this is the beautiful picture of Lodi Garden, right, in Delhi. And once again, one of the finest example of the development of architecture during the Delhi Sultanate. It was also a period which actually saw the development of music. So new musical instruments like sarangi, rabab were introduced. Please remember this part on Amir Khusro. Okay, he is one of the most important person from the medieval Indian history. Amir Khusro introduced many new ragas, okay, rags of music such as Gora and Sanam. He evolved a new style of light music known as Qawwalij. So Qawwalij was basically developed by Amir Khusro only, right? By blending the Hindu and Iranian systems. So Qawwalij are basically a blend of Hindu and Iranian system. The invention of sitar was also attributed to him only. Okay, so sitar, later on the modern form of sitar is guitar. So it was all developed by Amir Khusro only. This is why he becomes one of the most famous person from the medieval Indian history. The Indian classical work like Rag Darpan was translated into Persian during the reign of Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Pir Bhodan, he was a Sufi saint and was one of the great musicians of this period. So please remember, Pir Bhodan was one of the great musicians from the Sultanate period. Raja Man Singh of Gwalior, please remember this. This is not the Raja Man Singh from the court of Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar from the Mughal emperor, but he is another Raja Man Singh. So Raja Man Singh of Gwalior was a great lover of music, and he encouraged the composition of a great musical work called Man Kautuhal. So Man Kautuhal is what? This is a great musical work from the Sultanate period. Okay, and it was all due to development under the Raja Man Singh of Gwalior. Okay. Literature. So we are going to discuss about the developments in literary sources, and here you would see some of the name of scholars like Ziauddin Barni, Al-Baruni, right, and also some books like Tarikh-e-Firoz Shahi. So pay attention to it carefully. This part is really significant. Ziauddin Barnis, he was the scholar who wrote Tarikh-e-Firoz Shahi, which contains the history of the Tughlaq dynasty, specifically about specifically about Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Minhaj-us-Siraj, he was another important scholar, and he wrote Tabaqat-e-Nasri. So it is a general history of Muslim dynasties up to 1260. 1260. Amir Khusro, we discussed about his contribution in music, right? But apart from music, in literature also he contributed. He was the famous Persian writer of this period. He experimented with several poetical forms and created a new style of Persian poetry called Sabake Hind, or the Indian style. He also wrote some Hindi verses. Amir Khusro's Khajanul Fatah speaks about Alauddin's conquest. So please remember, Khajanul Fatah was written by Amir Khusro, and it is about Alauddin Khilji's conquest. His famous work was Tughlaqnama. So please remember, Tughlaqnama is also a work of Amir Khusro only, which deals with the rise of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Sanskrit and Persian functioned as linked languages in the Delhi Sultanate. Jia Naqshbandi was the first to translate Sanskrit stories into Persian. Okay, so they also started the translation of Sanskrit sources into various other languages like Persian. There was another book, Tutunama, or the Book of Parrot. It became popular and translated into Turkish and later into many European languages. Okay, in fact, Amir Khusro is known as Tutiye Hind. Okay, it means the parrot of India. There is another important source, Raj Tarangani. It was written by Kalhan in 9th century. So it was written during the Sultanate period, but the work is related to history of Kashmir. Okay, it belonged to the period of Jainul Abidin, the ruler of Kashmir. Okay. By the way, Kalhan is supposed to be the first historian of India. Okay. Many Sanskrit works on medicine and music were translated into Persian during the same period. In Arabic, Al-Baruni, you remember, who came with Mahmud Ghazni in India? He wrote Kitab al-Hind. And apart from the developments under the Sultanate period, there are some contributions by the regional governments also. The regional languages also developed during the same period. Chand Baradi was the famous Hindi poet of this period. Bengali literature had also developed, and Nusrat Shah patronized the translation of Mahabharata into Bengali. Nusrat Shah, one of the kings from Bengal. The Bhakti cut led to the development of Gujarati and Marathi languages. In next class, we will see the Bhakti movement and Sufi movement, one of the most favorite topic of UPSC. At the same time, during this period only, the Vijayanagar Empire was established, right, in 1336 by two brothers, Hariyar and Bukka. So the Vijayanagar Empire patronized Telugu and Kannada literature. So it was all about the various developments with respect to art and culture, economy, administration, and socio-cultural development during the Delhi Sultanate. That is all for today. Happy studying. Thank you.